Oh, the weather out here is not so frightening. Oh, hi. Hi. Oh, you don't recognize me, do you? I'm Gabriel, the angel. Oh, right. Right. You don't recognize me because I'm not wearing the usual stuff, the wings and the white robe and the halo that you were probably expecting. I get it. I get it. But I haven't worn that stuff. I haven't worn the official uniform in over 2,000 years now. Not since that night when I scared those poor shepherds half to death by just showing up out of nowhere and telling them that they needed to get on the move and get over to see Jesus because Jesus had just been born. Yeah, I stopped wearing the uniform after that. Now when God sends me out on business, I just try to dress with the times or with the time of year, which is why I'm wearing my favorite ugly Christmas sweater, the one that has Elf on it, that classic movie that you folks made. I love that movie. Anyway, as I'm sure it is for you, this night brings back a lot of special memories for me. The memory of scaring those poor shepherds half to death, although I have to confess, I kind of enjoyed that one. But it brings back a lot of other special memories as well. For instance, the night 9 months earlier when I showed up out of nowhere in full angel uniform at Mary's doorway to tell her that God had called on her to deliver the embodiment of God's essence and ways into the world through a child that would be named Jesus. I thought for sure when I dropped that big one on her that she'd be as terrified as those poor shepherds were going to be 9 months later. That's why I told her, it's okay. Don't be afraid. But you know, she wasn't. She wasn't afraid at all. She was amazed. And if I do say so myself, she was also amazing. She listened to all of it, took it all in, considered it, asked me a couple of questions, and I don't blame her for that. But then in the end, all she had to say to me was, and I will quote that famous band of yours, the Beatles, from a few decades ago, let it be. Let it be. That's all she said. And I said, cool. And then I just flew back up to tell God that I had completed my assignment. But the thing is, I knew that she had to have known that it wasn't going to be easy. That none of it was going to be easy for her. As a young, not yet fully, completely, officially married woman in a poor backwater town like Nazareth. None of it was going to be easy for her. And she was right. It wasn't. But what she didn't know was that none of it had been easy from the very beginning. From the very beginning. You know those documentaries that you people make, those behind the scenes things where they talk about everything that went on that nobody knows about in terms of some important historical event or some movie or some famous band, you know, those kinds of documentaries? Well, let me give you a little behind the scenes info. And I really hope God's like wrapping presents or checking on Santa's progress and not really paying attention to what I'm about to tell you. But on the day that God told the heavenly host, me, the other angels, all those other divine beings that were there to help serve God's purposes from the very beginning, on the day when God told us about this idea to come down in human form, you wouldn't believe the argument that broke out. Some of us thought it was an awesome idea. But many of us didn't. Many of us thought it was a really, really, really bad idea. And most of those were the same ones who thought that long before, when God had the idea to create humans in the first place in God's image and likeness, that was a really, really, really bad idea. But you know God. You know God. God absolutely refuses to give up on you. And so in the end, God decided to go ahead and do it. God decided that the best way to help you understand who God is, to understand God's ways, to understand how God calls you to live, was to come and be with you as one of you, as another fully, completely human being, to come and show you what all of that was about in someone who you could see and hear and feel, someone who you could aspire to be like as much as you chose to. As much as you chose to. You know how on this night of all nights, people love to talk about faith, about how important it is to have faith in God and in God's ways? And that's true. But let me let you in on another little behind-the-scenes secret. None of it. None of it on that first Christmas Eve, on all the other Christmas Eves since, on this Christmas Eve. None of it was really about your faith. It was always, and always will be, about God's faith. God's faith in you. God's belief in you, that you would receive Jesus, that you would listen to him, learn from him, and then do your best to try to live like him and the way he asks you to. It was always about God's faith in you. And see, I'm not sure you really understand that. I'm not sure you really realize that that's what this night is all about. I'm not really sure you believe it. So that's why I dropped by. To remind you. To remind you in the hopes that you would, on this night and every night after, realize it a little more. Believe in it a little bit more. And make that your Christmas gift to God and to each other and to the world. Oh, shoot. Look at the time. I can only stay for a couple more minutes. A lot of other churches that I got to drop in on before the night's over. And then after the work is done, I'm really kind of hoping to find some shepherds to terrify. Just kidding. So before I go, though, and apparently since your minister has disappeared, I have two last things that I would like you to do. One is you will notice that on the bottom of the candles that you were given, there's a little switch that will turn them on. They'll do some